You know what? We're going to talk about Space King today. You know why? Because Space King fucking rules. Hello everyone, my name is Arthur, and on this channel we talk about 40k, but today is different because I felt like it was my time to give you all a Christmas gift. Oh, okay, I guess a New Year's gift for you guys to get some lore and info on a cute little indie show by the name of Space King. You've probably heard of it, but by God, it deserves a little bit of dissecting here and there. So today we're going to be covering a bit of an abridged history of its creation, at least to the best of my knowledge, the lore we have up to date, and also cover my theory as to the whole universe's reason for existing. So to give you guys a bit of a rundown, if you didn't know, Space King is an indie series made by all-around funny guys Tom and Don, the owners of the channel Flashkits, which, if you couldn't tell by the name, they are Warhammer fans. Though the thing that kind of made them see success is their content wasn't exclusively Warhammer. Dare I say, they had a pretty decent pipeline to deliver satirical animations about relatively trending topics. Whatever was going on, they would make something a bit spicy and a bit edgy, and they basically make an animation to make fun of it. And a lot of times these animations would include references to Warhammer ranging from subtle to not. Like, if you want to get what I'm talking about, see the Tech YouTube is Getting Weird video to understand what I mean. I'll be real with you guys. I only even tangentially watched their videos back then. Sometimes they would be funny, but a lot of the time their humor was a little bit too based on internet pop culture for me to be really that interested in it, and also was a little bit too edgy from time to time for me to really find it that funny, but sometimes it was actually really goddamn funny. It was very algorithmically charged, and although scathing in its criticisms of the people involved, I never really found them to be really too harmful or taking themselves a bit too seriously. Though I will say that changed when they tapped into something I think we all held near and dear to our hearts, and that is Black Templars murdering furries over and over again. Kind of an old concept when you think about it, as most Black Templar mains are just a little bit unhinged, but the Flashkits had started a series about Black Templars going on a murder crusade to kill off the menace that was furries. Both sides of which were basically parodized to the point of extremity. Extremeness? Yeah, whichever makes sense. Where the Black Templars were overly aggressive, overly zealous, and horrendously violent exaggerations of the actual Templars in lore, and the furries were the stereotypes of what the majority of the internet had been making fun of since the goddamn 90s. They were all parodies of the various different aspects of the furry fan base, from the dramatic and incredibly overblown proportions of tits and ass, to inflation, to how the fandom tends to over-sexualize everything, even if it is considered radically inappropriate. Albeit we don't talk about the Bluey episode because, well, Australia doesn't want us to know about it. But this is a story for another day, or maybe not. This video is probably just like a one and done talking about Space King, unless Space King really goes someplace with its ending and I have to bring it up again, but like, I don't know, man, we'll see. If you want to see more Space King videos or me talking about the various different aspects of other indie series, just like make sure to like this video, because if it gets really popular, I might do this again with like, I don't know, TTS, or maybe even Hunter the Parenting, my goodness. Me chilling myself aside, this is where we were. There was a lot of hot-ass merch being sold that was pretty damn cool involving the Templars. I remember rolling up to a game with a friend to play Old World, and said friend had a Black Templar hoodie on. But you can only dance with the devil in the pale moonlight for so long before he starts to dislike the tune. This was, relatively speaking, around the same time that GW was handing out strikes like an umpire with Tourette's. Either through an alleged cease and desist, which, I'm gonna be real, I couldn't find the exact original post, but apparently Flashkits' team posted on Facebook that they were receiving a cease and desist from 40k's legal department specifically for their 40k content, so a lot of it had to be taken down from what I could find, though I couldn't find any of the main nitty-gritty points of it other than a few posts on Reddit. So, all that being said, where do they go from here? The furry saga was incredibly popular, dare I say probably one of the most popular series they had on their channel, and it was covering something that they enjoyed, so, you know, it was getting rid of passion as well as financial incentive. So, what do? Well, they made their own Warhammer with blackjack and hookers, but no hookers actually, because girls are icky. And thus the birth of Space King, a product all their own, which is kind of the culmination of their skill sets in a weird way. Like, they are basically just parodying the 40K setting and its entire continuity with a lot of love and passion in their hearts. I really think that it turned out very good, even for me, who tends to not really like that kind of overly edgy sense of humor, which I know is a shock to all of you. I think that Space King is fantastic. I think it doesn't take itself too seriously, which I think makes it especially interesting on many layers, because there is a certain earnest charm to this. I know it sounds like I'm glazing it like it's the height of intellectual abilities, but bro, this show is dumb as fuck in the best way possible. Don't go into this series expecting anything than just a juvenile fun time of dick jokes, poop jokes, and slurs out the ass. It's not taking itself that seriously, and neither should you. It's a fun ride of Tom and Don seem... Okay, I just want to make a little aside here. I don't know what it is. I feel like this is just fate trying to mess with my dyslexic ass, but I keep wanting to say Ton and Dom for some reason. I don't know, it just feels like their names are incorrect, and my brain is trying to get me to say it the right way. I don't know, it feels weird. It feels like the gears... Let's cut this out if it's not funny. I keep it if... I don't know, make it funny. I'm hiring you. Okay, whatever. Tom and Don seem to be eager to continue this series with an almost breakneck speed of releasing the episodes, especially with the Christmas special being just released now, with a lovely cameo from Zach Hadel, which is nice. There's about 4 episodes up now, with a bunch of ancillary media on the side, so we have enough to go over and discuss the lore of the universe, see where it parallels with the Imperium of Mankind and 40K, and just discuss what I think is going to happen going forward. Am I going to take it seriously and actually give it like an in-depth lore dissection? No, but I think it's fun and you should too. So what is the universe of Space King like exactly? This setting is basically just 40K adjacent, and you shouldn't really think about it too much, but it's in the far future, I think, where a mythical being that has united thousands of worlds through his sheer might and hatred of all things woman, that being, Space King, a being with unmatched strength, and is so cool that he is pretty reasonably worshipped across the universe. He is also responsible for creating the Psycho Warrior Legions, which are made in his image wearing relatively the same armor. Now, you might think that these guys are Space Marines, but yeah, they're somewhere between Custodians and Space Marines in terms of power scale. That's kind of hard to tell at this point. Even at that point, they're kind of beyond that. It's weird. So let's kind of break it down. What are Psycho Warriors? Easy. Well, sort of. They are genetically modified abomination warrior monster men who basically contain the genetic information and memories and personalities in his ball sack. And by ball sack, I mean globule receptacle, which I'm not joking. This is basically the universe's equivalent of gene seed. To create a Psycho Warrior, you need to replace their own pair with holy globules, and then the Psycho Warrior overrides the child, which it has to be a child's personality, with the Psycho Warrior that is held inside of those globules. They grow to be a fully grown killing machine in seconds, able to rip heads off with ease, and also are equipped with some of the best weapons in fiction, I would assume. Though the scale is a bit inconsistent at times, so we shall basically have to have a talk later about inconsistencies and what the scale actually is. But yeah, they are armed with near impenetrable armor, except for when it needs to be penetrated, for a funny joke, I guess. But the best part is that canonically, they have what is basically this universe's equivalent to adamantine, used exclusively for their codpiece. Yeah, they have the strongest nutsack protector in the universe, because if the globules are destroyed, then that warrior can no longer be revived and they die forever. Which makes me wonder if the Psycho Warriors are gonna ever have to deal with the dwindling numbers due to them not knowing how to create more, though we don't know if they know how to create more or whatever. But considering how unserious the setting is, I doubt it. For fuck's sake, there is an entire episode dedicated to them trying to find crystals that, although don't make their weapons more effective or any better at anything, they do make them shoot green lasers instead of pink, which is a lot cooler because pink is a girly color, which bullshit, it's my favorite color, but whatever. Though also it's sourced from Tom and Don directly that you can mismatch globules, you know, take one from one guy, one from another, put put them in a body, and then you get weird hybrid personalities that come out, so expect that in the future, I guess. They also mentioned something weird might happen if they only have one globule, but they also mentioned that they could just make a clone one at some point, but whatever. This is all speculation on hours of research, and by God, fellas, I know too much about the shape, size, diameter, and quality of the penises of the main cast. It is unnerving. But anywho, Psycho Warriors are divided into legions, which is kind of the first hint that this is basically a semi-pre-heresy style setting, more so than a 40k one. With different views and ideas, the legions themselves work together to accomplish the same thing, which is basically just finding Space King, who is somewhere out in the universe, or is dead, or is just pulling a Vulcan and will only come back when certain criteria are met. Yeah, probably by collecting all of these Space King relics that are scattered throughout the universe, but also maybe just killing all girls out there, because that's a very common theme here. Each legion has fun specialties, and although I can tell Tom and Don do like putting in the effort to make them all unique, sometimes they are literally just a different color and that's it. Like Hate Monger, popular character, one of my favorites, if not my favorite, is from the Beholders Legion, which are a part of a very specific type of legion known as the Hate Legions. It's not exactly it. The naming conventions here are pretty basic, but whatever. You could probably tell by the name, the frowny face, and the piety of this blueberry in the show that he is obviously a Black Templar stand-in and is very, 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 very angry. Also, canonically has a really weird dick. The things I do for you fuckers to learn this, but when you have someone like Terry, who is from the Gallivanters, and outside of him being purple and being pragmatic, we know literally nothing about him. A lot of dudes in this show are like that, but there is a certain flavor to them. I am particularly fond of the Coagulators, which are heretics. They're Blood Angel stand-ins, and also they're meant to represent, or at least look like, the old Revenant Legion paint scheme, which, if you don't know who that is, the Revenant Legion are the Marines that existed prior to the Blood Angels discovering Sanguinius, when they were raving monsters. But instead of being raving, ravening, gigantic, muscle-bound, blood-drinking monsters, the Coagulators are kind of chill, which, though, also, that Revenant Legion comment is just speculation, I should note, but I mean, they look similar, and one is obviously parodying the Blood Angels at minimum, so I guess it could be just a really fun, layered reference, or I'm just pulling shit out my ass. I mean, there's not much to go off of at this moment. But yeah, each of them have their own reasons for doing what they do and their own beliefs. The main legion we follow in the show is the Star Defenders, which, from what I understand, the Star Defenders, the Beholders, Bryce's Legion, the Flame of Space King, have little tiny flag sticky outy bits at the bottom of the Star Defender's flag to represent that they have a shared bond. Now, this is actually a very common practice in the Psycho Warrior legions, because if one legion finds a very important relic, the other legions that are associated with them at the bottom of their flag are there to basically tattle on them if they get something that needs to be known by the rest of the Psycho Warrior brood, so that they don't hold secrets. There's no Dark Angels in this, because everybody just snitches on everyone. But you might also notice by looking at the flag that there's actually a fourth patch on there, and that's not for a Psycho Warrior Legion, actually. That is for a non-Legion required element, which now we get to cover the few ranks of specializations of the setting, as there are actually a few cool ones. See, they seem to be trying to bring in special Space Marine ranks to make it pretty obvious that they are parodying 40k. So, to mention the fourth patch, that is the Medicae of the Sanctum Globulari, because they really want to keep that semi-Latin sounding 40k zhuzh in there, you know? Weirdly enough, they are probably the most important part of the Psycho Warrior Legions, but are, from what I've seen, treated like shit most of the time. Though it could just be Chestnut, who's the Medicae in the show. Which, fun fact, it has been stated that if Chestnut wasn't such a wimp, he would probably be the most combat effective member of his squad. Like, go on his wiki page right now and see his list of kills. It's kind of crazy. As you could probably tell with the name Medicae, they are the apothecary stand-ins for the setting, and are responsible for taking care of the squad's medical needs, as well as reclaiming the holy globules upon death of a Psycho Warrior so that they can be reborn into a new body. Allegedly, either episode 5 or 6 is going to have something to do with the Sanctum Globulari and how it functions, as it's a holy order dedicated to the protection and understanding of the holy globules, but only time will tell, I guess. Because as I make this video, only episode 4 is out, Kingsmas, but yeah, Next up, we have the Imaginators, individuals who put together technology in order to solve problems. They are literally just tech marines, with more of a leeway into saying, "Nuh-uh, my force field blocks all damage," as their primary skill set. They range in skill from Terry, who is a pragmatic and very well thought out individual who tries to keep ideas simple and, concise, to Bryce, the worst character in the show, who is probably going to be a central antagonist later if I had to guess. But what do I know? He's an idiot who makes cool-looking, overly fancy gadgets that are overly decorated, like the Soul Cannon, which harvests the souls of 10,000-year-old ghosts to fire lasers that didn't work, but is actually... Okay, that's a very impressive thing to build in almost no time. The next one we only know a little bit about, in that there is theoretically a chaplain equivalent in the setting, but all we know is that there is a war priest in the Star Defenders who's voiced by Mick Lauer, and that's it. Good to see him and Zach Hadel show up in the same episode. I'm glad that they're still talking to each other. And might I add, I miss Stamper. Every day. Every day. Outside of that, there isn't really anything else. I mean, there is the implication that there are psychers in the universe with episode 4, but we don't know much other than he might just be a one-off with a psychic nose. The Legions are all hunting for relics to find Space King. They all hate aliens, aside from the Coagulators, but we don't talk about that. They all abduct children to create new psycho warriors, and, how could I forget? No girls allowed. It's a simple premise, but I find it's especially fun because of it. So it's time for me to veer a bit off course here and just discuss some shit involving the series as a whole and my ideas involving it. So nothing too on point for the source material. I just want to give what my opinion is, as well as discuss a few side materials that I've learned about. So sit tight, don't die, be happy, and all that garbage, I guess. Space King as a series seems to be a reaction to several things, and I feel like me saying that kind of defeats the purpose of Space King. It's very obvious Tom and Don are coming at this series with a level of genuine passion, with 3 main design points in mind. Number 1, to make something that is basically a 40k skinwalker, using a lot of the same terms but remixing it down to what is 40k's original core back from like the 70s, 80s, 90s. 2, they are obviously trying to go at this a bit more genuinely than most other series would do it, and have actually made a concerted effort to make fun of people who think that there's going to be some kind of dark, ironic twist at its end. And 3, they literally just want to make the show funny. That's it. At the end of the day, it's a show about dudes who suck out magical space balls that they implant in children to make new super warriors. The lore and universe can be modified on a whim. They have openly stated in some episodes that they didn't even know how they were going to end it until they got there, and had to come up with something. But they have also stated that there is an overarching plot that comes in with them doing the show, which they have been kind of careful not to spoil at all, which I think is cool. But what is my theory? What do I think is going to happen here? What do I think the show represents? What overly elaborate theory am I going to navel gaze about? Okay, this is actually a really common theory, so I'm not really that special here, but the creators have actually touched on parts of this in their second channel, Once Upon a Time, when answering fan questions, and I think it made the most sense to me, so I'm going to talk about it and then extrapolate on it, as it seems that these fellas are very passionate about 40k, but their passion seems to extend into the community, into the fan base, but also to the player base. What they are doing with Space King is not just really making 40k light. They are making how a lot of people view 40k from when they were just getting into it as a kid or sometimes a teen, where all the memes came from of the Black Templars fighting while screaming and being so religiously zealous that they come off as a bit insane, overly exaggerated versions of the 40k canon, and how a lot of people who complain about modern 40k kind of remember what the old lore used to be. A mess of nothing really happening, a bunch of threats that are built up in the background over time, but nothing really comes out of it at a certain point because the situation needs to stay the same. Space King will never be found. The setting must remain grim and dark, and everyone gets to live even if they die. It's just, Saturday morning cartoon shenanigans. This is the romanticized version of 40k that people who hate the Primarchs returning want. Judging from how all those people talk about Space King, it seems to to work. But I think the part I find most interesting is that all the Psycho Warriors are, well, toys. Everything they have so far is powered by batteries that are referred to as power cores, even though they look almost exactly like Duracell AA's, which may also just be a visual gag, because, I'm pulling a lot of this out of my ass. But to continue further, their proportions, their designs, all of it is reminiscent of the 80s and 90s, when a lot of people would have loved old 40K. That's basically where a lot of people that are, old heads in the fan base got their start. Their arms have ratchet joints like an old action figure. All their weapons resemble accessories that you would see on like old He-Man toys. And I don't know if anybody ever thought about this way, and this might just be me kind of being a little bit conspiratorial, but the reason why none of them use solid state ammunition like metallic spikes like they talked about with the Terry episode, and the reason why they use lasers is because it was a very common trope back in the day for laser blasters with actual light bulbs in the gun to shoot off, like an old 80s and 90s action figure that young children would want. And another example as to how this is further exemplified is, weirdly enough, by the merch ads and just some of the asides that they do that kind of have a wraparound effect, where they show a group of kids in a treehouse being juvenile as talking about how girls are icky, and there's this static CRT filter playing for them while they are playing with toys and dice. The toys they are playing with are obviously the Psycho Warriors of the main cast. Though it does resemble more D&D than a war game, that could easily be seen as an extension of how they all viewed playing 40K in the 90s was like, with commercials for sugary cereals, so on and so forth. It just seems to be a very earnest way of capturing that feeling while modernizing it for crowds who would have that sense of humor. Now, I'm using a lot of distancing language and not including myself in that lump because I am not a part of that crowd. No, I was not alive in the early 90s, so I cannot comment. I am old by internet standards, but I'm not that old. And hell, I got into 40K at the tail end of 7th edition, so I am a bit of a poser there, but whatever, man. I think that Space King is really funny. I do think some of the jokes are a bit too edgy for my taste, but I would be lying if I said I didn't want to grab a lot of the merch that they were putting up, because side note, hey, if you guys are going to start doing YouTube, if you want to make YouTube merch, make sure your merch looks good. And I don't mean that as it's a cool representation of your channel. No, I mean it has to look good on its own outside of being a representation of your channel. If I didn't even know anything about Space King and I wore some of the hoodies that they got up for the Kingsmith merch drop that they got going on, I'd wear it. They look cool. They're awesome. By the way, side note, they're not paying me. I should say, if anything, I'm paying them with free promotion, but whatever. Do I think you should take Space King seriously? Fucking kidding me? No. Have I not been open about this entire time? I'm giving this background to prime you for a good way to see the series and get a little bit more of a meta-contextual depth to it than none at all. It's a very simple show with simple ideas and a simple execution. For fuck's sake, I wouldn't be surprised if they did it just to get all the old Sleepy Cabin goons back together on the same show and just seeing if they could make as many raunchy jokes as humanly possible. I mean, they got Mick and Zach, and I don't know, there's 3 others that they would need to get, but whatever. I just really wish Sleepy Cabin would come back, but I know that's impossible. But regardless, is this theory serious? Is this theory going to be true at the end of the day? Probably not, but I like to theorize about these kinds of things, and it's probably going to retroactively be proven wrong, but it is an interesting way to view the series. This has the feeling of an old Newgrounds cartoon series with a lot more polish to it. Its jokes hit quite often, and the part I find I enjoy most is that even if you aren't into Warhammer 40K, you can enjoy this show on its own merits, as it is pretty funny. But there is a lot of meat there to consume if you do in fact get the references. Like how the super mega killer omnicidal AI in episode 3 is a reference to both the Necron as well as the Flayed ones, which is really cool. I think Space King is good for the community because it brings people in and makes people more interested in the subject material of 40K. I think it's fun, and I just wish we would get more series like this, because on an unrelated tangent, but I guess to some degree, I gotta say, TTS, not actually the biggest fan of it, but that's a topic for another day. I hope you all enjoyed me covering this bizarre fucking setting, and also, might I add, happy holidays. I hope you all are enjoying yourselves out there and having a safe New Year's after this. If you want me to cover more fan series like this in the future, just let me know in the comments, and I will do my best to keep an eye out for recommendations. If enough people actually ask for it, I will probably consider covering TTS and how it all came to an end, because weirdly enough, and there's a little bit of trivia here, I actually have a weird personal connection to the show in such an odd way that I never discuss with anyone, but that is a story for another day. Thank you all for watching once again, and special thanks to my channel members for supporting me. With your help, I'm able to do these videos, support my editors over the holiday season, buy my parents Christmas presents, and not feel like I'm going broke, and, you know, plan for some fun events coming up in the future. So, yeah. Thank you all for letting me get through this year with how difficult it's been. And as a bit of an aside, I just gotta say, this year has been one of the toughest I have ever gone through. It has had some of the lowest lows I've ever had to go through. And since this is going to be the last video of the year, I'm going off script. There's literally nothing left on the page. I didn't even think I was going to put this in at the end, but fuck it. I think it is time for me to open up a little bit and say, this year blew. This year sucked so much. I got into so many things that I thought were really fun, like kickboxing. I got into exercising more actively again. I got to travel to America more times than I have in my entire life in this year alone. I had so much fun this year, but then things just started to kind of fall out of place. There was so many things personal that I'm not going to kind of bog you guys down with, but there was the fire, and we all know about it, and this is going to be the last time that I talk about it, with good reason. The house fire really put a lot of my life into perspective, because it made me realize, one, hey guys, little tip from Arthur Bones, hey, get tenancy insurance if you're a renter. It helps. Yeah, it helps. But also, never think that you are 100% always secure, because just out of nowhere your life could change and it could just not be your fault. Now, am I saying be anxious and paranoid at all times? No, I'm just saying that, like, always be prepared to have a fallback, because nothing is guaranteed. And it was a brutal lesson to learn that way, especially because I had to limp through it with a busted knee. But I'm going into next year with a very different mentality to that. I'm not going to dwell on that. I'm going to burn that in my brain. That after this video, I'm probably never going to bring that up ever again, except for like maybe jokes, I guess. But outside of that, this year has been rough on me with a lot of other personal issues, but I'm going to make next year probably the best year of my life. And I say this all because without all of you, without your support, without your help on the GoFundMe, without your help on my channel, without your help anything involving any of this, I would not have been able to get through that. And the idea of me not being a YouTuber and not having that fallback made me genuinely terrified. Just a bit of existential dread that if I was just working back at the call center I was before I got into YouTube, and I had lost my house like I did now, the idea terrifies me, because I would have had nothing. I would have had to go back to live with my parents, and that would not have been a fun step back. But yeah, I'm just some almost 30-year-old idiot talking on the internet, and I'm very glad that I have your guys' support. So, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all once again for watching. And until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful new year.